Alright, let's take a look at this local storage web page. It's got an MP4 video file playing in the background, muted, and we've got 3 field sets here, and instead of the legend just being a caption, we have a button inside of the legend tags, and then inside of the field set we've got a table, and each of these tables have table rows, and each table row has a table header, a single table header that goes from left to right. I have a checkbox inside the table header, as well as a label for the checkbox next to it, and a text input. Finally, 3 things in the table header. And then I just copy and paste the duplicates until I have 7 different things here that I want to keep track of. My checkbox will highlight and strike out the label for the checkbox, and you can type beyond the width of this text input if you so desire. When you click the save button, for 2 seconds it's red, and then it jumps from the save function to the load function, and at the end of the load function it actually turns the text blue. So we see this information being saved and loaded. If you want to read all of this, if you happen to type in too far, you just have to you've got an up, down, left, and right arrow on your keyboard. You could just do that to reach the end of that if you want to. You probably will never need that much of a note for something like this simple little project. You basically just put, how much you paid and what date you paid it. It's probably all you really want to do for that. Alright, with that being said, another thing I'd like to mention is every single one of these buttons calls the same save function. So if you save something here, you can come all the way down here and hit this button. It doesn't matter. It's going to cause the same save function to fire. And then again, at the end of the save function, it fires the load function. Let's take a look at the code. Here's my folder. I have the single HTML file, and I've got the tinyfireworks.ico and fireworks.bmp, which is just a little bit bigger, and then my July 4th 2017.mp4 file. That's all that I have. I kept my CSS and my JavaScript inside of my HTML file for convenience. So let's take a look at the code. Alright, head, HTML head, title, build checkboxes. Here's the link to put a little image next to that title right there. So here's the title, build checkboxes, and here's the little fireworks icon that I created. And opening style tag. I'm going to go over these styles really quick. I'm just going to highlight the meat of the styles. So for the body and the HTML, everything in these curly braces stylizes the body in the HTML. So there's 3 styles there. For the div with the ID of wrapper, there's 2 styles. And here's some styles that I commented out because it didn't seem that I needed them, but I didn't want to erase them just in case in the future my page starts acting funky. At least I'll be able to just take the comments off here and have this code again. Okay, all of this is for input, and in square brackets type equals checkbox. You've got like 4 different statements that do the same thing, and basically what that's doing is scaling our text box up by 2 so that they're fatter. And then there's also a padding and a margin left set as well. Here is for input in square brackets type equals checkbox plus label. So we have a padding left and a padding right set. This is for the class strike through :checked plus label. We have a text decoration set to line through and background color set to lime. So that kind of lets you know that when you click this and you see the lime and the strike through, this is the style that has something to do with that. The field set has 4 different styles set to it, and the field set again is basically the the square itself, and the legend of the field set is where the button is inside of. For the TH, which is our table header, I told you for every table row, I have nested inside of the table row a table header, and nested inside of the table header, we've got our checkbox, our label, and our text input area. So these are the styles for the table header. We've got 3 buttons. There's the styles for the buttons. The background has a linear gradient from light green to green, and you can kind of see how the top of the button is lighter than the bottom of the button. Linear gradients do that for you. And then we've got the label, and the label again is these labels all in the middle here that coincide with the checkboxes. Now if you want to have all of your labels the same width, you need to set the display to inline block, and then you can set your width to whatever pixels that you want. Alright, so that is everything that we have for the styles. So I'm going to come up here and close the style tags up to condense my code. There's the end of the head tag, so I can close my head tag as well. The opening body tag has the onLoad event set to the load function. So there's 2 times that the load function gets called. One, when we close out of the page and we go away, and then we come back another day. As long as you're coming back in the same browser that you saved your information, you'll still have that. The onLoad event calls the load function that we'll get into toward the end of this video. But also when I click my buttons here, it calls the save function, and at the end of the save function we have a little timer that in 2 seconds it calls the load function. There's 2 different things that call the load function. Alright, div class equals full screen dash BG. Inside of that div we've got our video. So here's our opening video tag, and here's our closing video tag. In our opening video tag you see that we have the words loop, muted, autoplay, and poster equals, and there's nothing inside of the double quotes. I don't have poster set to anything, but if I do want to make an image to show in case my video doesn't work, I want to have a poster show in the background, that's where I would put the URL to that poster, to that image. I would put the path of the image right in there. Class equals full screen dash BG underscore video. Then we have our source inside. Source, this is if you had a WebM file. I don't. I'm only using this line, the July 4th 2017.mp4. That's what you see playing in the background right here. But if you want to try 3 different file types for different purposes, that's how you would do it. This is how you would source your WebM. This is how you would source your MP4, and this is how you would source your OGG file. There's the ending video tag and the ending div, so we're done with that class. That div. Now let's check out our div with the ID of wrapper. The wrapper holds all 3 of these field sets that basically are the meat of this project. So here's the opening field set tag. That goes from line 127 to line 182. Alright, after the field set tag we have the legend tags. And inside of that, instead of having just words to be a caption to this whole field set, we have a button. Button on click equals save. So we're calling the save function. So when you click this button or this one down here, you are going to call the save function. We'll look at that when we're done with all this. On the button it says save February 2019, as you can see. There's the ending button tag. Ending legend, opening table. So the table goes from line 131 all the way to line 181. Alright, from line 132 to line 138 is our first table row. That's this first row up here. Inside of the table row tags, we have table header tags. Inside of the table header tags, we have 3 things. The first thing is our checkbox, and this is the code to make my checkbox. Input name equals febrent, value equals febrent, class equals strike through, type equals checkbox. I have my name and my value set to the exact same variable called febrent, and also when I create my label for that, it also says for is set to febrent as well. And that's my label, label for febrent, the name rent, the word rent on the label, and the ending label tag. And then lastly, we have the text input. Input type equals text, ID equals 1. Ending TH, which is our table header, ending table row. So you just take this and copy and paste it for as many rows as you need for your table. Maybe you only want 3 rows for your table. Maybe you want 52 rows for your table. Whatever the case may be, you just copy and paste this and make sure that your name and value and label for, make sure that all of these match. This, and this. And they can't be the same as this. They have to be unique to your next row of information. And then when you get to your next text input, make sure that you don't say ID equals 1 again. You need to say ID equals 2. So this was our first table row, and here's our second table row. It's a lot of repetition, really. Just change the names of things. Alright, with that being said, I will take you all the way to the very last table row of this table, which is my savings. Table row, table header, checkbox, label for the checkbox, text input, ending table header, ending table row, ending table tag, ending field set. Now that you have your whole field set with all of your table rows with your checkboxes, labels, and text inputs, you can just take that whole thing from the opening field set tag all the way down to the closing field set tag and copy and paste that for your next field set. And then just sit there and meticulously go through all your naming conventions. Then do it again for your third. I only have 3 field sets of information here. You can have more. Mine takes up bills for 3 months. That's good enough for me at this time. I've made entire calendars that went for the whole year. I didn't want this to be that cumbersome. Alright, so after your last field set, there's the ending div. This ending div is for that whole wrapper that wraps everything. See, div ID equals wrapper, it's highlighted. So we can close the wrapper. Now we are going to look at the JavaScript. And in the JavaScript, we're only going to look at 2 functions, the save function and the load function. I don't care about the remove my stuff function because I'm not using that function here. But see, our script tag ends at line 382, after which the ending body tag and the ending HTML, and then the whole project is over at that point. What did I do? Okay, so before we look at the functions, we create 3 variables. The first variable, var I, semicolon. We're not setting it to anything, we're just creating it. The second statement is here, var checkboxes equals document.querySelector all, parentheses, and single quotes input, and in square brackets type equals checkbox, and close that whole thing up with your semicolon. So this variable checkboxes will be identifying all the checkboxes on the page. We're going to do the same thing for our text inputs, but we're calling them text boxes even though they're not really boxes. For text boxes equals document.querySelector all, parentheses, and single quotes input, type equals text, in square brackets, and then semicolon. And this is commented out, so you don't need to worry about that. I'm not using that variable. Alright, so let's look at the save function. This function gets called only when we click one of these green buttons. The first part right here is when we're saving our text input. That's all these different text inputs right here. Like right now, these blue items have already been saved. But if I were to go, oh, I want to put some stuff there and there. You see, it's currently black. It's default black right now. But there's a value in there. It's not saved yet, but there's a value in there. So let's look at the for loop for this. For I equals 1, semicolon, I less than text boxes dot length, semicolon, I plus plus. So the next thing we're going to do is look inside of our curly braces. The first statement is this, var value equals document.getElement by D parentheses I dot value semicolon. The next statement is this one, local storage dot set item, and in parentheses key, which is in quotes, plus I comma value semicolon. Now when you use local storage dot set item, in the parentheses you are creating a key comma value pair. When we go to retrieve this information, when we load it, we're going to use local storage dot get item, and we're going to provide the key. When you set it, you give the key and the value. When you retrieve it, you just use the key. Now the next line we have is an if condition, if value. Now here we have values that have already been saved. They're blue. We have values that I just now typed in here. They are the default black. So if value, well, it's true that we have some values in here, and what's going to happen is this statement right here, document.getElementById parentheses I.style.color equals red. Because there's values in all these different text inputs, they're going to turn red. The ending if block, the ending for loop, and now that's all that we have to say about our text inputs. Let's also do what we need to do for our checkboxes. So for our checkbox inputs, we have a for loop as well. For I equals 0, colon, I less than checkboxes dot length, colon, and I plus plus. There's one single statement for the for loop that deals with saving checkboxes, and this is it. Local storage dot set item, and in parentheses checkboxes square brackets I dot value comma checkboxes square brackets I dot checked. So when we were dealing with the text areas, we were using parentheses I. When we're dealing with the checkboxes, we're using square brackets I. Slightly different, but not that different. All right, so that's everything for the for loop. For the saving of the state of each of these, let's add a couple more while we're at it. And then this part right here, var timer equals set timeout parentheses load underscore empty parentheses in single quotes comma 2000. What this does is once the code gets to this point, in 2 more seconds it's going to call the load function. Now as you can see, in the save function, we seen something that talked about the color red, but we didn't see anything that talked about the color blue. That's because the color blue happens in the load function. But this right here is calling the load function. So we get to the end of the save, and we bounce to the load. So with that being said, and there's the end of the whole function, the curly brace to end the whole function block. So with that being said, I'm going to close the save function, and let's take a look at that load function. We did a couple of things for the checkboxes, and we also did things for the text inputs. We did a loop for the checkboxes and a loop for the text inputs. For the save function, we're going to do the same thing for the load function. So function load underscore empty parentheses. Let's look at the checkboxes first. This time I'm doing the checkboxes loop. For and in parentheses I equals 0, colon, I less than checkboxes dot length, colon, I plus plus. We're going to do this single statement, and it looks like it's more than one statement, but there's only one semicolon here. This is only one statement. It's just taking up 3 lines. Checkboxes square brackets I dot checked equals local storage dot get item parentheses checkboxes square brackets I dot value triple equals true in single quotes question mark true colon false semicolon. So it's going to go through all these checkboxes and see what it needs to load. Now we're done with all that information that we needed to do for the checkboxes. Let's check out what we need to do to load anything that's been saved in the text inputs. Of course, we've got the same for loop. For I equals 1, semicolon, I less than text boxes, the dot length, semicolon, I plus plus. Everything is going to happen between this curly and this one. The first statement is this one, var stored value equals local storage dot get item parentheses key in quotes plus I. So here we're using local storage dot get item, and we're retrieving it by retrieving the key. Then if there's a stored value, which there are stored values here, and I haven't hit the save button yet, but once I hit the save button, these items that are in black font, they will also be saved items. So I might as well hit that. So now they're all red for a couple of seconds, and then when you see them turn blue, that means that we have finished the load function as well. So now there are stored values in here. All those blues are stored values. If stored value, then this happens. Document.getElementById, parentheses I.value equals stored value. And then here's that blue coloration right at the end of the load function. Document.getElementById, parentheses I.style.color equals blue. And blue is in double quotes. There is the closing curly brace for the if block. Here's the ending curly brace for the for loop block. And here's the ending curly brace for the whole load function. So it's lit red there and it's lit red there. So I can close up the load function. I'm not using the remove my stuff function at all. The ending script tag, ending body tag, and ending HTML tag. So with that being said, we've finished up all the code here. And again, I can add something here and here and hit any of these buttons to make it happen because they all call the same load function.